Hello, my name is Cheng Chi, and the study I'm going to present today is a qualitative study about trainee counselors' perception on self-care. Now, we have all been hearing about self-care for many, many times in our course, and perhaps in other professional settings. But it really interested me particularly how training counselors, uh, how trainee counselors at our stage of training view self-care and how they interacted with the self-care materials or promotion information in the course, and more importantly, how those things could have an impact on us. Let's begin by acknowledging the importance of well-being in mental health services. Previous research have emphasized that well-being is fundamental to achieving quality of services. However, with such focus on well-being, the significance of self-care for service providers themselves can sometimes be overlooked, particularly in mental health services, as noted by the previous research. Mental health practitioners are especially vulnerable to work-related risks like burnout and compassion fatigue. Now, research found that nearly 40% of psychologists in training experience high levels of emotional exhaustion. Thus, the burnout poses a significant challenge for us, particularly for therapists heavily invested in client relationships. And for trainee counselors like us, we face unique challenges, making us particularly vulnerable to burnout and compassion fatigue. The intensive exposure to mental health challenges early in our career, combined with underdeveloped coping strategies, increases our risk. Furthermore, the dual pressures of academic and practical responsibilities create a high stress environment that complicates balancing our professional and personal need. Many professionals and researchers in this field has then proposed that self-care plays a central role in preventing burnout. However, self-care is broadly defined and can encompasses a range of activities, both something one can do for itself or even including going to trainings like mindfulness training. A commonality found by the researchers in self-care is the importance of balancing care for others with care for oneself, making self-care a highly individualized practice. Because in the end of every day, everyone's needs are different. As long as activities aim to maintain and improve health and well-being, it should be called self-care. If the topic of self-care and professional risks are so important for trainees, what is the current situation? Now, the ethical guidelines from BACP and BPS lack of clear picture or even direct mention of self-care. And according to a study, though 78% of training programs in the UK mention self-care related topics, but only 4.7% directly mention the word self-care. There are three problems needed to be addressed about the research here. Problem number one is the existing research, including the one give us the data just now, focus mainly on the program materials, which of course cannot reflect on how people engage with that material. Problem number two, there are so many counseling training programs in the UK, ranging from certificate to diploma to doctorate level and provided by university or private organizations. This situation made direct comparison between training programs so hard because they are just so different, and often we can't find direct opponent, the comparable components in them. Problem number three is that the view in these studies are a little outdated. Older research emphasized the burnout's negative consequences, and consequently thinking self-care as only a preventive measure in place so people do not get burnout and not get exposed to other professional risks. However, in psychology academia, we could see a rising of positive psychology perspective in recent decades, focusing on resilience and well-being, which not only talk about the consequences and how we can prevent them, but more on what things are working, what does the good side of the story tells us, and what should we learn from not only the underperformed individuals, but also from people who are doing really great. The current study aims to address those problems, explores the self-care emphasis in a counseling course and its impact on trainee self-care practices, offering insights by utilizing qualitative data through interviews with trainees themselves, by addressing their subjective and individualized responses, and by not limiting the questions only on the preventive side of the story. This research filled in the research gap. As the study is an exploratory qualitative study, it does not hold any hypothesis. This study recruited 13 trainee counselors from Bangor University's Counselling Master's program. They're invited to attend an online interview which follows a semi-structured approach. This means the researchers follow a question list regarding their perceptions on self-care, the course emphasis on self-care, and the impact of those. But it was only semi-structured, so the researchers could also probe and ask participants to expand more on the points they have mentioned. So it has a certain flexibility. After the data collection stage, I then analyzed the raw data using thematic analysis, which is a qualitative tool, helps to find important and relevant bits of information from the participants' responses, and further finding commonalities and organize them into themes to inform us on how they perceive self-care. The results of such analysis suggested that there are 4 master themes across all the participants' response. The first master theme is the methodology of self-care. Participants typically talk about what specific types of self-care activities they do and what are the principles of the self-care they hold in mind. For types of activities, I found that participants really have a huge repertoire of self-care things to do. The most frequent ones being all kinds of sports, arts like drawing and painting, also music and entertainment like watching shows. However, those activities could be very personalized. For example, doing body care or even run errands have been reported as self-care. For the principles of self-care, I found that participants have generated some common themes in their way of doing self-care, involving shifting focus to taking care of oneself and finding balancing in different areas. And also with awareness that they need to follow an individualistic way and tailor self-care to their personal needs. The second master theme is the motivations to self-care. All participants of the study reported that self-care has an impact on them, and this motivation mainly comes from 2 sources. One being mental health, physical health benefits, and professional motivations. For the benefits of personal mental health and physical health, participants frequently mention the calming and decompression effect of self-care for them. Also, it could elevate moods and bring happiness. Professional motivations include those that find self-care as a must-do for preventing burnout and keep them going for professional responsibilities. An interesting finding here is that the responses sometimes suggest the benefits could also be self-growth, fulfillment, which are obviously beyond preventive measurements. The third master theme is around the course promotion of self-care. In reaction to those promotions, we get some mixed feedbacks. First of all, though most participants agree there are a lot of emphasis on self-care in the course, some still think it needs more and pointed out the course might need more emphasis on self-care more than just professional needs. The course has a commonly noticed reminding effect on self-care, which could be found commonly in mentions of PPD, the personal and professional development. A sub-theme found under this course promotion of self-care is that participants engage with the self-care information by learning from others. So, taking advice from the tutors or modeling tutors, learning new perspectives of self-care from peers. Participants found accepting and welcoming attitudes from the tutors really facilitating their self-care. And the genuine care for the students from the tutors was particularly stressed here. With the perception of self-care resources provided by the course, some participants liked it, but some others requested more specific training and clarity of guidance. The fourth and the final theme is the factors that hinder the self-care. I could identify three major sources of it. First, being the university and placement work-induced factors. Trainee counselors are often time-burdened by the assignments and working arrangement, which combined to limit the availability to engage with self-care. Also, difficulties could be posed by personal life, including the work arrangement outside of the course, so not the counseling placement, or lack of previous personal experience of self-care. Finally, the environmental factors may also play a crucial role here. This includes moving to a new country by some international participants, not used to the new environment, or lack of supportive services in the environment, or even physical environment that we all know how bad the weather can get in the UK, especially during the winter times. Our findings now reinforces the individualistic approach to self-care, demonstrating that no rigid boundaries define self-care practice. Our finding is also in line with the argument on the diverse nature of self-care activities, since we have extended range of the types of self-care activities beyond personal ones, to include social interactions and pastoral support. Our findings also challenge the static perspective on self-care, that it is some actual thing to do, but it can also be not doing something, or finding balance between areas, which further supports the individualistic approach to self-care and possibly calls for an emphasis on that in the training programs. The motivations we observed mostly align with the conventional views of self-care as a way to prevent burnout and protect mental health. However, some participants emphasized its role in facilitating personal growth and fulfillment, extending beyond practical concerns. This finding aligns with the previously pointed out problem that underscores the need to broaden the concept of self-care to include development and achievement. Training programs should actively promote updated ideas that highlight growth and self-actualization. Our findings highlight that some trainees creatively incorporate self-care into their livings, using it to foster self-awareness and growth. This insight often gets overlooked in literature focused on the negative impacts of inadequacy of self-care. By showcasing the positive outcomes of creative self-care practices, this study opens new avenues for future research into the practices of individuals who are greatly satisfied with their self-care. It also suggests that training programs should allow more flexibility in their curricula, encouraging the sharing of experiences among peers and not only a teaching and learning relationship. The study has limitations, including a limited interview time frame that can lead to superficial data collection since the topics are just too very broad. Future research should focus on specific aspects of self-care for possibly deeper insights, one topic at a time. The sample was also limited to a single university, potentially affecting the representativeness of the results. And in the sample we have many international students, which may constitute a higher proportion than what you can see in the field. But then the international students' perspective does not only limit to themselves. Their unique experience on moving to new country could also be teaching us about how trainee counselors may react to the general change of environment, as it will be encountered even for the local counselors, like moving to a new city, or changing in their career, or possibly many other similar scenarios. The take-home message here is that self-care is multifaceted, deeply personal, and extends beyond traditional definitions of preventive measures. It's essential for training programs to embrace a more dynamic and growth-oriented approach to self-care, supporting trainees in their journey to integrate it into their lives meaningfully. This understanding will pave the way for more supportive environments where the going to be mental health professionals can thrive. Thank you for watching my presentation, and I'm welcoming any questions commented below.